Hi, does your student have trouble reading the little words like is and in? It's probably visual processing, and I'm going to show you how to use Poetry Play to work to their strengths to get them to read. Hi, so it's Thursday in real life for me. Not sure when it is for you. Today we're going to do Poetry Play. And kind of my rule of thumb is if a child can say the word, I can teach them to read the word. So I'm going to show you how I incorporate poetry, activating the kids' memory so that they can then learn to read, not depending on sight words or sounding words out. I don't know if you quite understand all the research that goes into reading, but first we're going to put phonemes, that's individual sounds to our letters and our letter blends. And eventually we're going to learn to read syllables, like BLE is bowl and GLE is goal, even though it doesn't look like a GUL. Okay, so we're going to read syllables. Then we start learning to read whole words at a time. The next step that most of us don't ever do is speed reading, where we read whole sentences at a time. So if that seems impossible for you to think you could look at a whole sentence and read it, some of our children that have visual processing feel the same way about looking at a whole word and knowing how to read it. Students with dyslexia, where the letters are twisted and turned, reading the larger words is actually easier for them than the smaller words. And this Poetry Play works with their strengths. So I'm going to show you now kind of what I do in my classroom in my little studio in the house. So let's look at the poem that we have. Okay, so this poem, At the Car Wash, it has some things in it that I really like. One little car is in the car wash line, so it has a lot of sight words, is, in, the, covered with mud and dirt and grime, but it has longer words like covered. He went in the car wash, scrub, 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 splash, 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 and rub, rub, rub. These repetitive words are very important for students struggling with reading. It reinforces with them the idea that the same letters are always going to make the same sounds in the same word. So you want to have repetitious reading like this in their fluency practice. When he came out, he was clean and dry. The happy little car said thanks, goodbye. The other thing about this poem is it's not so long that if you used it as a first poem with a child, they wouldn't be overwhelmed at the amount of reading that you were going to ask them to do. It looks approachable. It has some little words. It has some big words. So this is the perfect kind of poem to start with when using Poetry Play to learn to read. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy the poem. And I only did part of it, but you're going to copy the whole poem onto what are called sentence strips. Teachers all know what they are. Parents, if you need to order them, they're just sentence strips. They come in colors. It doesn't really matter. So you're going to write your poem out. If you have a pocket chart, that's great, or a dining room table. I'm using my old sewing room table. So we have now our poem rewritten, and this is where the kids are going to start practicing it. You're going to read them a line, one little car is, and they're going to just reread it. One little car is. We're going to have them point at each word as we go. After we've gone through it a few times, we're going to cut the words all apart. We're not going to leave any words on the same piece of paper as another word. If your child's old enough and safe enough with scissors, I would have them help you cut the words apart. This reinforces to the student that certain clusters of letters are words. That's another thing that visual processing will interfere with, is the kids don't see the spaces between the words. Maybe you've seen it with students that don't write with spaces between their words, because to them it's all a mass jumble. They don't see the letters specifically. They don't see the spaces either. So having them help you cut apart the words reinforces the idea that words are separate entities. Okay, so on this first lesson, before you let them go, now you have all the words cut apart and laying on the table, and they are not in the order of the poem anymore. So that's really important. Don't let them go without doing this very next piece at least one time. You need to get this whole first lesson in. Okay, so for the next part, we're going to be kind of the director. So we have the poem, and we're going to read it again, and we're going to have the students look at the words and find the words, and we're going to build the puzzle on the whiteboard behind us. So I'm going to tell little Bella, I'm going to say, okay, the first line is one little car is in the car wash. So one. And she's going to look at her words. She's going to be looking for her words, deciding whether it could be it or not it. Now this poem in particular, one sounds like a W, but it starts with the O. So most of the second graders are going to know the number word starts with an O, but she's going to find the word 1 and she's going to put it over here on her whiteboard. You can tape it in a hallway, on the wall, the refrigerator, a pocket chart, anything you have. You're just going to take the words from being all mixed up on a flat surface to now we're going to build a sentence. So the next word is little, little. And so she's looking. If she doesn't find it very quickly, I'd say, what letter do you think it starts with? Little. And I'm going to find out, does she know it's the L? I'm like, okay, L words, I'll help you look. And then I'm going to help her if she needs help to find the word little. And now we're going to read what we have up here. We have 1 little. So not intimidating to kids. Not too much to ask them. They just found the word 1. They just found the word little. So, okay, let's stop and read it. So to ask them to read 1 little, there's no anxiety there. They didn't know you were going to ask it, so they weren't building up an anxiety. And it's so simple to do, they're not going to get anxious. So 1 little car, car. And if you have hand motions that go with your letters, we're going to go car. So what letter? They're going to find car. And they're going to tape it up. As soon as you start to feel the student have anxiety that the sentence is getting too long, don't ask them to read it without reading it again yourself. Modeling, working with their memory, practicing, all of those things just blend together to work for the kids. So we have 1 little car is. We'll talk about is. It's a sight word. Some of the kids think it's going to be easy to find and they don't find it. I don't know why. It's one of those words. So 1 little car is in. So we're going to find in. We're going to tape it up. We're going to read it again. 1 little car is in. It's getting longer. 1 little car is in the. 1 little car is in the. So at this point, most of my kids that are in first grade are going to think, wow, that's a big long sentence. And they might want to start quitting on you. Don't let them. Model it. Make sure that when you ask them to read it, they're going to be 85 to 95% successful. It's okay if they stumble on one word. You tell them, wow, if you could read 1 little car and they stumble on is, you're going to say, okay, it's is. Let's start again. And then I'm going to hint at them. So I'm going to say, let's start again. 1 little car is in the. Okay, your turn. So read the whole thing for them again. Just keep that anxiety down so they'll practice engaging with the words and the text. So 1 little car is in the car. Wash. Oh, my tape fell off. Line. Okay, this can be done with the whole group as well. I kind of mastered this as a resource teacher with a whole group anywhere from 5 to 7 kids. It works fabulous because they're all helping each other find words. If you have kids that have trouble sharing, you can pass them out like a deck of cards so they're only responsible for their stack. I make them lay it out so that I can see it. They can't hide their cards. It's not a secret game. This is a sharing learning game so we all can see everybody's cards. I tell them not to look at a neighbor's pile until you looked at your own pile and Miss Jacobs asks, okay, well, if everybody's looked at their own pile and we haven't found the word wash yet, let's everybody think, what's it start with? Wash. What? It's a W. Everybody check again for any words that start with W. So I'm going to give them another clue. So you want them keeping track of their own list, not worrying about their neighbor. It's another thing students with learning disabilities often try to deflect from their insecurities and worry about their neighbor. So we do it whole group. We build the whole poem. The first time you do this, only start with a short verse because you don't want to interrupt the lesson from introducing it to reading it on the cards to cutting the cards apart to building it. So if you think you can only get through a first verse in that day, only start with the first verse that day. You want to get them all the way to the point that they're building it. The last step, and this one you can save until tomorrow if you need to, is now we're going to read the words we know. So I'm going to go to my pocket chart, my hallway wall, whatever I have. I'm going to read the whole thing over for them, however much we got done, whether it's a whole verse or the whole poem. I read it out to them. And I say, all right, now we're going to pick down the words that we know. What's one of the words that you know? So if the students have dyslexia, they are going to gravitate to the longer words like covered, because this word has more visual clues than the word car. The word car, it's 3 short letters. not as many clues in this word. So they're going to like this word better. So they'll gravitate to the big words maybe. They might, if they had learned some sight words, they might go for the sight words. It doesn't matter. Have them pick out a word and they tell you, oh, this is covered. Good job. I'll take it. What other word do you know? They go up, they pull off another word. I know this word. Car. Oh, I know car. It was all about a car. So they pull out the word car. So we take everything now off the wall. Okay, now it all comes off the wall. In a whole group, I would have them line up around the kidney table in a circle and just take turns. And it would go fast because while you're on deck, you're picking out the word that you're going to read and have a backup. And while you're in line, be looking, be listening. If you're doing whole group or individual child, they get to the point where there aren't any words they know, you're going to read everything that's left. So don't fill in the words that aren't there, because we don't read words that aren't there. We only read the words that are there. Read all the words that are left on the board and say, okay, now which one of those did you just learn? And make them feel confident and make them happy that they just learned a word. Like 5 seconds ago, you didn't know it. I read it and bam, you learned it. Now, you and I know they might forget it again when they go to sleep, but they're going to be so happy and so proud that they learned it. I have taught, I can't even tell you, more than 30 kids how to read by using Poetry Play. So that's how the lesson's set up. Let me go over the steps again. You choose a poem that's not going to be visually intimidating in length to start with. You want to choose a poem to start with that has repetitive words. You also want to, very early on, by the second or third poem, have rhyming words. It builds that phonemic awareness of changing out the syllables, so your word families. And we're going to talk about how they're spelled different and how crazy that is. And you're going to validate their feelings about how crazy that is and how hard it is and how proud you are that they're learning to read this, even though it's so difficult and everybody's trying to make it hard for them. So that's Poetry Play. The order to do it. So your first lesson, you're going to read the poem on the paper, read the poem on the sentence strip, cut apart the words, rebuild the poem on your whiteboard, pull down words that you can read, put them back on the table. So tomorrow when my resource group comes back, I'm going to have them all out on the table and we're going to do it again. And I would do this for 30 minutes, 5 days a week, and the poems just got longer. As the students got faster and more proficient, the poems just got longer. And we could get through some really long poems by Christmas. And then after Christmas, I started with a whole new group of kids because it's such success. If you have an IQ that's average and you have visual processing difficulties, you can get over them. It's not something that has to haunt you your whole life. You just need to have some skills to work with and it's gonna be fine. So that's Poetry Play. I'll type it up. It'll probably be a free document on my TPT store, Lessons in a Bubble. This video is gonna be posted on YouTube and my Facebook group. So if you're seeing it on YouTube, come join my Facebook group, Kim for the Kids. If you're seeing me on Facebook, come over to YouTube and subscribe, and you'll be the first one to know when I put up another little lesson. And that's Poetry Play with Kimberly Jacobs. Bye.